Hi Cancers, your video is super late, I'm sorry. So I'm gonna go from August, starting, August end of eclipse into mid-September. And we're gonna look at, I did a spread, I already shuffled the cards and laid them out because I just was like, let's just get to the reading. And then I also want to pull a couple of cards as we go along regarding what you all need to learn as a result of what happened with the solar eclipse and the lunar eclipse, and because the energies of the eclipse, they continue on beyond just when it actually happens, and they're actually, in my opinion, have been more potent in the days following. So yeah, I just want to take a look at sort of what is it that the eclipse wanted you to look at, and what is it that you need to take home from what occurred during the eclipse. And so the solar eclipse, the lunar eclipse, which was a full moon in Aquarius. I believe that happened in your, so yeah, the eclipses occurred, I believe, between your second and your eighth houses. So Leo being in your second, Aquarius being in your eighth. So the solar eclipse occurred in your second house. And I'm not surprised because I'm seeing a lot of pentacles coming up here. Sorry for the lighting. I actually, give me 1 second. I think I know what's wrong. Okay, that's a lot better. Sorry about that. So yes, we have a lot of pentacles, and like I said before, even on the bottom of the deck, we have the Knight of Pentacles. And this is not surprising because the solar eclipse occurred in your second house, right? New moon in Leo in your second house. So in the second house, being the house of Taurus, represents, my relationship, not only to myself, right, but my relationship to now, the relationship, moves into my material possessions and the environment, the material environment around me, right? So that is what we're talking about when we're dealing with second house theme, second house territory. It's all about like, how do I feel about myself? How do I value myself? How do I hold space for myself? And my possessions, am I possessive over others, or how do I possess myself, right? Like the mastery of the second house is being able to possess oneself, in hopes of wanting to stop possessing other things, right? So, and then the lunar eclipse occurred in the full moon in Aquarius occurred in your eighth house, right? And the eighth house being the house of how we merge with others, the house of how we, combine our, material possessions with another person, sexual merging, psychological merging, physical merging, sex, sexuality, inheritance, death, right? And so that occurring in the having occurred during the full moon, what needed to end for you regarding, like, what were you holding on to? What were you holding on to regarding, either, like, were you relying on an income from another person or from a partner, and has that ended, and it's now, the solar eclipse is now asking you to step into more of your, self-sufficiency, or self-sufficiency. Yeah, that's the word that I was looking for, right? Because Taurus is all about, how can I get mine on my own, whereas Scorpio is about, well, how can we merge and create, and in this merging, how can we now create something entirely new, right? In the death of our individual selves, how can we come together in that death of our individual selves and create something, and birth something new in the collaboration of our energies, right? So let's get into the reading. I said that before. We're actually going to get into the reading now. So 10 of Wands, right? So the ending of hard work, the ending of a creative project, the ending of a creative cycle even, right? And that once again, like, right, with the lunar eclipse having occurred in your eighth house, right? Endings with, this creative energy. Um, Perhaps you've reached the culmination of a project. But I definitely see this person is feeling very burdened, right? What work, like, how have you felt? And it's interesting because we have these two tens, right? We have this 10 of wands and we have this 10 of pentacles. And in the center of these two cards, we have the 7 of swords. And so, is there this tendency to run away from, and the swords representing our thoughts and our ideas and the things that exist for us mentally, right? Is there this tendency to want to run away from even the thought or the idea, right? That abundance can look like this. Abundance has the capacity to look like this, but are we assuming that it always has to feel like this, right? Like, and in the center, right? We're running from this in the center. And I'm a Cancer moon, right? So I resonate very, very much. The moon being very comfortable in Cancer, I tend to feel very Cancerian, very, watery, and how I navigate my emotions and my relationships. I feel very attached to my Cancer moon. And even that right there, what I just said, is very Cancerian, right? Like an Aquarius, I'm an Aquarius sun. Aquarius sun, never wants to admit attachment to anything. But when you've got a water moon, really any, water moon, there is this deep sense of emotional, attachment to things. And attachment can be a really beautiful thing, right? We don't have to think of attachment as always being this negative thing, or, because how am I to learn the lessons that I need to learn, or how am I to fulfill my desires if I'm constantly in the state of wanting to be like detached, right? And even this person who has these 10 wands is not looking up, is buried in work, and is refusing, like, and in this process of working very hard, is sort of refusing to kind of acknowledge what's going on around him, right? He's in it. He's like, he's really in it right now. And it's okay to want something. I feel like there is something that is, even this Queen of Pentacles, it's like she's looking at this pentacle, she's looking at this thing. And even this Knight of Pentacles on the bottom is looking at, whatever this represents for you. It could be a relationship, right? It could be a Scorpio, or not an Earth sign. I said Scorpio, so maybe there's Scorpio out there for some of you. A Taurus, a Taurus, Capricorn, and a Virgo. Sorry, I just got home from work. My brain is a little foggy at the moment, but I really wanted to get this done for you all. And there's something that we want, but there's like fear that if we actually were to kind of run towards it, as opposed to, if you look at the cards, he's running away. And it's like the 7 of Swords for me can, yes, represent somebody who's cheating themselves and somebody who is maybe lying or being deceitful. But I think it's also somebody who wants to run away with their thoughts and doesn't want to acknowledge whatever this circus might represent, right? And yeah, like, are you cheating yourself? Is there something that you really desire or feel, but then there's also this part of you that's like, yeah, but we've been there before. And whenever we try to actually go for what it is that we want, we end up feeling overburdened and just overpowered. And like, I can't even look up and lift my head from all of this work that I'm doing, right? So, but there's a lot of and like in its tentacles, so there are actual tangible things that you can, and also, right, like these figures are by themselves, and me being a Cancer moon, um and it's like weird because I'm an Aquarius sun and a Sag rising, right? So there are these, I have these placements that really call for, community energy and friendship and being really likable and well received by others, and being really, like there's a lot of attention that, like when you are a sign that is very social and friendly, you attract a lot of attention in that. And sometimes I just want to like be left alone with my Cancer moon. Like sometimes I just don't want to have, I don't want to be bothered. But it's hard because then it's like I've also managed to create and give off this, reputation or this appearance that, thus far, that like I'm totally friendly and I am those things, but I'm also just like wanting to, how can I bury myself in my work and not really have to, right? Like there's people in this Ten of Pentacles, and there's abundance, and in this coming together, right? In this coming together comes responsibility, right? Like when we begin to really emotionally connect and socially connect with people, there can come emotional responsibility that, it's not that Cancers aren't up for it. It's just that we feel everything so much. It's just like, okay, and it's misinterpreted that I'm like, being a Debbie Downer, or that I don't want to have anything to do with anybody. But it's just like, no, the reality is that like my feelings can become incredibly intense and fierce very quickly, and a lot of the times it's not even my own stuff that I'm picking up on. So this actually makes me anxious because I don't know what's going on with all these people. I don't know what's going on with these people. I don't, right? It's like, it's like, and like this card also for me is like, represents running to what we perceive as safety, what we perceive as security. And, you know, this person's perceived security is, well, I just bury myself in whatever burden I can, right? And these 10 of wands, right? Whatever heaviness this 10 of wands can represent, it can represent, food or an addiction, or, sitting up for hours and watching YouTube videos, or like what is the burden, right? Like what is the heaviness that you then bury yourself in these 10 of wands, because this is kind of scary. But then it's like we think about it and it's like, oh, but like it is actually really fucking nice. Like it's really, this seems really tempting. This seems really, prosperous and abundant. And even though there's lots of pentacles here, I'm not really getting the sense that it has to do with work. I get the sense that this may have to do with a new circle of friends. Possibly like a new relationship. I'm not getting too much like relationship energy. I am getting, this 10 of Pentacles is on top of this Three of Swords. And yes, sometimes these group dynamics, especially for Cancers, can create this, even when it's not even real. Even when it's not even real. And even, and it's sometimes this, right? This, and for me, this 10 of Pentacles is not really, it's representing, yes, abundance, but it's more so representing, for me, group dynamics, right? It's representing what happens when I actually put myself out there, what happens when I, being a 10, and, for me also being a very kind of Capricorn card, right? Like this Capricorn is the earth sign that establishes the dynasty, right? Taurus gets the plot of land and establishes that it's his, right? Or hers or theirs. Taurus, has sturdy footing and doesn't move, and it is immovable. Um, and then Virgo comes along and plans for the harvest and is very meticulous in planning. Well, what are we going to do with this plot of land that Taurus has now, acquired for us and is possessing for us? And then Capricorn says, well, how can I pass on, this plot of land and the meticulous planning and harvesting of Virgo on to the next generation, right? Like, this grandfather here now gets to look out and see what he has basically created for his family, and that, like, he not only gets to share in this abundance, but everybody else does, right? And for me, Capricorn is also about, how do I establish myself in the public world, and not so much in a way that is always about being friendly and social, but is also about doing so in a way that garners power and authority responsibly, right? We have Saturn there, very responsible use of this power. And Capricorn being your opposite sign, and I've been saying this a lot to a lot of the to a lot of the signs this month, especially because we're having these eclipses that are occurring in these opposing houses in each sign. And so it's, how are we, and looking at opposites, right? And that, yes, while you are a Cancer, right, nurturing all about the inner landscape, how can we then, also sort of tap into whatever Capricornian kind of energy you may carry? Because, even though you are one sign, you're one side of a coin, and on the other side of that coin is your opposing sign. So you two are bonded, right? Cancer and Capricorn, mother, father, nurturing, breadwinner, however, whatever the dichotomy is that you want to create between the Cancer and Capricorn relationship. It's for me, it's important to look at how I can sort of, like, for me as an Aquarius, how can I, allow myself to be comfortable stepping into Leo power? And, Leo, like, yes, Aquarius is all about speaking for the masses and being on the side of all and everybody, right? But then how can I also get comfortable stepping into a role as a leader, right? And using that fire energy and asserting myself. How can I become okay with being in the spotlight? Because as an Aquarius, the ideas that I have, and I have Mercury in Aquarius too, right? So the ideas that I have can be very innovative, but then I have this tendency to be like, oh, but I don't want to take on the spotlight. But then in order for those ideas to be manifested, I have to step into the spotlight. So I have to sort of really look at, well, how can I grab my Leo energy too, right? And so how can you grab your Capricorn energy, right? How can you grab a hold of that? And really, like, yes, nurturing, we've been able to, be incredibly empathetic. And, Cancers, I know for me as a Cancer moon, like, incredibly empathetic, feels everything, emotionally aware. And as a result of being emotionally aware, there are things that we're aware of that people just don't tend to pick up on. There's a hyper awareness to Cancer, and especially if you're watching this and your moon is in Cancer, there is definitely a hyper awareness that we have. But then we kind of, this high priestess, she knows so much. She has so much to say. And sometimes, she does, and most of the time she doesn't say anything, right? And it's her way of, one, being humble and tapping into her humility. But also this high priestess, she's just in a place where she's like, I don't really need to say anything. but we're, you know, but for me, being a human in this body with, you know, these intense feelings and these emotions, that sometimes it is vital for me to step out, right, into that public arena. And that for a lot of us, doing that has been really painful. You know, allowing ourselves, expressing ourselves, allowing ourselves to, you know, be amongst people, to let people in into our abundance, to share in abundance with people. You know, just to be with others can sometimes in and of itself be painful. Because there are so many things, right, that go through the cancer, that are processed in the cancer mind. And it's not to say that we're, you know, too sensitive or not. We're actually incredibly strong, because you can't constantly be here and like still be living and like be weak. Like that's just not, you know. We also live in a world that doesn't really want to value emotional intelligence and emotional awareness, and empathy, and empaths. Like, we live in a world that doesn't really want to do that. So, you know, this high priestess knows so much, is constantly downloading information, is picking up on things constantly, but also allows herself to be invisible, right? Allows her, you know, and for me, this can also represent somebody who's trying to make themselves invisible behind whatever barricade, right? This could be work. This again could be, you know, an obsession, an addiction, something that needs to be ended, something that's at the end of its rungs, right? Something that's, because it's a 10, something that is becoming overbearing and is becoming a burden to whoever's carrying it or hiding behind it. And sometimes when we're constantly hiding behind the feelings and the downloads, the emotional downloads, the mental downloads, the psychic downloads that we as cancers really pick up on, this, like, it can become incredibly burdensome, right? And so then the concept or the idea of even being able to step into communion or community with others, right? Especially those that love us, because when we're around people that, you know, we're kind of indifferent towards or we don't really know, then there's this ability to kind of hide. But when we're around family, when we're around the people that know us, then it, like, we can't really hide. And there's also expectations of how we should be behaving. You know, and for me, you know, as a kid, family gatherings were difficult for me. Being around a lot of people, you know, was very difficult for me. And I didn't really begin to grow into that until I got older and I began to understand, like, oh, like, I'm downloading everybody's shit and it's not my responsibility to take it on. I don't have to take it on, right? You know, and then we have this world card. And so for me, the world card, you know, is again the completion of a cycle, the completion, things, you know, things coming to fruition. But it also to me represents like Saturn, again, Capricorn. And it represents sort of the freedom that we receive when we choose to, you know, it represents the freedom that we acquire when we choose to actually show up and handle the lessons that Saturn has to give us. And I want to clarify that. Can you clarify the world? Can you clarify the world? Okay. Yeah, Ace of Swords. And you know what? The Page of Cups kind of wanted to come out, but didn't. But on the bottom, we have this Two of Cups. So, you know, and now we have the Six of Cups on, you know, underneath. So, are there new ideas or new concepts that, you know, we need to be having regarding relationships. And maybe, you know, Mercury's in retrograde, right? Air sign, Mercury's in retrograde. You know, what lessons, what, you know, was there a relationship with an air sign, an Aries, or I'm getting all the signs mixed up today. Aquarius, Gemini, or a Libra, right? Was there, you know, was there some kind of, you know, heartbreak, right, that occurred in a relationship with an air sign, or, you know, anybody really, right? But it just, the Ace of Swords came up, and we have the Three of Swords here. So I'm wondering if this is an air sign, right, that we're picking up on, or somebody with a lot of air in their chart. And with this World card, now I'm kind of picking up on like a little mini reading within this reading. So with this World card here representing, you know, the completion of cycles and the complete, you know, and really the freedom that we get, like I said before, when we actually really, you know, listen to what Saturn has to say to us, and we really take on our karmic lessons with humility and willingness to learn, right? Are there new ideas that you're now receiving as a result of doing that work, right? Are there new ways of looking at relationships, and maybe a past relationship that didn't feel so good? But whatever, you know, whatever is going on, I definitely see whatever's going on, you know, in terms of romance, I definitely see the ability, right? And again, right, we have these Seven of Swords, and these seven swords all representing thoughts, and thoughts that are like, he can't even carry all these swords. It's like these two cards speak to taking, you know, carrying way too much weight. And I feel that it's weight that we're carrying mentally and psychologically and emotionally. You know, this guy can't even carry all of these swords, but he's not willing to let go of any one of these thoughts, right? And he thinks that if he can just get away with all of them, that, you know, he'll be able to escape the circus. But he carries the circus in these swords, right? And maybe, right, and with these two cards being connected, right, with the Seven of Swords in the World being very close to one another, right, one being on top of the other, and now we have this Ace of Swords as clarification that in freeing yourself from six of these swords, right, we're now able to actually grasp one and hold it tightly. And you know, and I really do feel this is solar eclipse stuff that's been happening for you all. And we're talking about second house, right? The second house is where your solar eclipse happened, in Leo, new moon in Leo. And you know, that second house is about self-worth, and what is it that I believe I am deserving of? What is it I believe? Like, do you believe you're deserving of this, or do you believe you're deserving of this? Right? And there's also this kind of victim pity party that we can play sometimes, right? Like, I also feel like this guy tries to kind of paint himself as the victim, when in reality he's kind of creating this situation for himself where he's running away from a crazy place, from what he thinks is a crazy place with crazy thoughts that he can't even hold on to all of because they're so fucking crazy. Right? And there can be this mentality of like, you know, woe is me, right? This can also be sort of a martyr card, you know, sort of for me. And it's like Cancer, like, you know, yes, Cancers have a reputation of being, you know, sensitive and, you know, a little moody. You know, I'm reading descriptions about like my Cancer moon sometimes I get frustrated because I'm just like, if somebody says like moody or like overly sensitive one more fucking time, right? And they give in that reaction in and of itself, it's just like, oh, like we're not all like, you know, there's strength in that ability in that ability to feel so deeply, but like, what do you do with it? Do you like try to run from it and act like you're a victim of it, or do you take hold of it, right? Like, do you take hold of it and actually value your ability, like value that gift that you have, value that ability, right, and share it. And that's what Capricorn wants you to do. Capricorn wants you to take, you know, the things that you're really good at, the skills that you are really good at, and share it and create abundance with it and create, you know, a dynasty with it, right? Like, how can you actually value your sensitivity, your emotional experiences, the downloads that you've received psychically? Like, how can you take that information and create like a bounty with it? How can you do that, right? Like fuck fuck this energy, right? Like this overbearing energy. You know, there's freedom. There's freedom in letting it all go. And then in that freedom, you get to grasp one thought, one idea, one thought, one concept, you know, and you have a firm grip on that, right? And in that firm grip, you have new ideas about, you know, how have I operated in my one-on-one relationships? And I don't, you know, and yes, I see this as, you know, yes, it can represent romance, but I also see this right now. I'm really picking up, like, and I heard seventh house Libra. And for me, that goes beyond just romance. It also is about, well, how do I harmonize with people? How do I allow myself to ebb and flow with people, right? Like, does it feel like this, or does it feel like this? It doesn't have to just be romantic, right? Because one-on-one relating for Cancers, even if it's non-sexual, can be tricky because, you know, even for me, like, my friendships can become very intimate very quickly. And then I'm in friendships that feel like this. I end up in friendships that feel like this. And it's a non-sexual thing. It's just, I end up, my moon's also in my 8th house. So I end up merging with, and Scorpio's in my 11th. I have Scorpio and Pluto in my 11th house. So I generally end up feeling like I'm merging with friends. I merge more with friends than I do with partners sometimes, right? But, you know, and for Cancers in general, the emotional depth to where we can go with things can kind of feel like, you know, and even if you don't feel like you're merging with people emotionally, right? Cancer also represents the fourth house, right? The house of home. And it's like, how have you allowed people into your home, into your inner landscape? How have you created this? And how have you kind of allowed people to really, I don't want to say take advantage of you. I'm trying to think of a better word, but, you know, how have you allowed people to really use the kindness and the generosity that you have to offer, and sometimes a little bit too much, right? And then how, and if you're doing that, and if you know that you do it, if you know that you're not valuing yourself or your possessions, you know, to the point where you're allowing other people to kind of take for granted, right, what you have to offer. But then how does that create this cycle of, like, sort of being like the martyr, like, oh, woe is me, I'm, you know, these people take advantage of me, and, you know, I've constantly got people coming in and out of my home and trying to stay with me, and I've constantly got this, and I've constantly got that, and I'm constantly giving all that I have to offer, and I'm constantly, you know, sharing my resources, and constantly, you know, from this really pure place. But it's like, you don't really have to if you don't want to. Right? That, like, sometimes it can get a little crowded, right? And then that, you know, creates some kind of resentment. That's created some kind of resentment between you and another person. And now we have this Nine of Pentacles with this Eight of Wands together. Sorry. We have this Nine of Pentacles and this Eight of Wands. And again, this is like the kind of relationship that I'm seeing today in your reading. So the Queen of Pentacles, like I said before, she knows her worth. She knows her value. She knows that what she has to offer is amazing. She knows her skills. She knows what she is and is not good at. She has humility. And you know, it's like this energy is great, right? Like being able to come together. And again, I feel like this is speaking to that full moon that just happened on August 7th in your 8th house, right? Which again is about merging, is about coming together. Like these two people are merging their energies. And in this merging, they're receiving healing, right? From Archangel Raphael. He's the patron saint of healing, healers, those in healing professions. Right? So this card for me represents like healing through merging, right? Which is a very 8th house sort of theme. But, you know, as an ending has come in that department, and emerging, right, has kind of been severed. There's a cycle that's been completed, and it doesn't have to just be a relationship, like a romantic relationship. It could be an intense, emotional friendship. It could be, a business partnership. It could be, a family relationship. It was severed. And this Queen of Pentacles is now asking you, as you have this new moon in your 2nd house, to really value and observe what it is that you can create for yourself, right? 2nd house is all about what can I create for myself from my own possessions, which is what can I create. 8th house is what can I create? What can I create from your possessions, right? Which is necessary, but we also need to have this type of energy where we begin to look at, oh, well, I have the ability to create, so much abundance, right? But I have to get over the fear of the abundance in and of itself, right? And I do see this nine of Pentacles and this 8 of Wands as representing inspiration coming in, this fire energy coming into that 2nd house, earth energy, this fire energy of inspiration of, oh, I can do this to create abundance, and I can do this and I can do that. I see this as a lot of you all coming up with new business plans, coming up with new ideas, and they happen quickly. They're coming in very quickly, right? So a lot of you having new ideas about, maybe some of you want to start a YouTube channel, maybe some of you, want to start a new business, or start, maybe some of you are looking at new ways to create revenue, or maybe some of you are looking at new ways to spread your voice or to spread your message, and it's not even about money, right? Maybe some of you are getting new ideas about how you can be more independent financially and self-sufficient financially, right? Because we've learned the lessons that when we rely on this merging, right, too much, or when we give too much, right, when we don't hold back, then we can end up once again in this energy of feeling, woe is me, like I'll keep and for me, this figure is also somebody who's doing all of this work for other people, in a sense. Like, yes, there is, and there is humility in doing it, but sometimes we also need to take a stand and be like, fuck you, I'm doing things by myself. I am abundant on my own. So I want to see, what do Cancers need to, what were some big lessons? What were the biggest lessons for Cancer for the solar eclipse? Biggest lessons for Cancer for the solar eclipse. Biggest lessons for Cancer for the solar eclipse. Yeah. y'all have been through a lot. Y'all have been through a lot. There's been a lot of questioning whether or not you can continue to go on. You can do it. You can totally do it. Just take some time to rest. Use this period. Use the next 30 days. I just heard 30 days. Use the next 30 days to kind of really rest and reconsider, right? Because, you know, this is heavy. This is heavy. And so in dialing this back a little bit, you're not going to go from this, you know, to this or to this immediately. It's a transition. You're transitioning. There's a transition. There's a dialing back of this burden and this heaviness, right? And so you're taking stock of all that you've really put yourself through. And all that others have also kind of brought in to your life, you know, whether it be good or bad. Some of this, right? We're learning how to heal from this. I'd rather be here than here, right? Like, this is, I'm in it, and it fucking hurts, and it's painful. This is like, it still kind of hurts, but the wounds are healing. I'm just a little bit more cautious now. I've learned my lessons, right? And again, be cautious, right? We don't, just because, you know, we have a reputation of, you know, being sweethearts and kind and, yes, moody, yes, a little oversensitive, but overall, just wanting to nurture, right? But sometimes when we do too much, right? Like I remember I was, you know, a couple of years ago, I was really, really, really in love with this one person. And, you know, I was just so in love with this person. And, you know, it was brought to my attention that I was feeding and giving love to this person from a cup that wasn't completely full. And so I was like, I was giving from a place that wasn't completely fulfilled. And so I was like, why am I so tired? Why am I exhausted? It's like, well, because you're giving from a cup half full, and what you really need to be doing is building your reserve, building up, you know, and then your overflow is what you get to give to people, right? And this energy felt very, 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 when it all ended, right, this energy resonated very much with me because I was like, oh, I'm exhausted. It's like, well, that's what happens when you give from a space that hasn't quite fully, you know, reached its max yet, right? Like you're just giving from your reserves, right? And that's not really a good idea, especially for those of us that have water moons, Cancer moons, those with a lot of water in our chart. Because we can exhaust ourselves emotionally very quickly if we're not careful. So let's do an outcome card for Cancers from now until mid-September. Outcome card for Cancers from now until mid-September. There's like a bunch of lightning going on outside. It's very beautiful. Outcome for Cancer from now until mid-September. Okay. 5 of Wands. Oh, and the 4 of Swords. There are a lot of people around you that want to collaborate with you, want to work with you, want to, you know, want to really creatively get involved with you. I feel like a lot of you have some cool ideas that are coming up, some really fresh ideas. A lot of us artists, musicians. So there could be some really awesome creative ideas that are coming in. you know, that can really create some abundance, and there's going to be a lot of people, right? And you get to be discerning. You get to kind of take your time and meditate and really reflect on, who do I want to collaborate with you? You don't have to please everybody. You don't have to please everybody. Remember, take this sword and cut out, sever what isn't needed, right? If you want to creatively merge with somebody, we get to be discerning about it. We get to think, we get to reflect upon it, and we get to maybe even be in a space of like, I'm not going to choose right now. I'm not going to take action. I'm going to be still for a moment and I'm going to allow this high priestess to do her work. And in doing so, I can then pick which one of these collaborators I really want to collaborate with. So that's your reading, Cancers. And again, Ace of Pentacles on the bottom of the deck. There's some really cool stuff that's coming in for you all. But like I said before, we've got to learn to be a little bit more discerning. And we get to be discerning. And we get to use, right, Capricorn, like, again, how can we pick up on that Capricorn? How can we pick up on that caution? Capricorn's very cautious, and for a good reason, right? So how can we actually use that psychic, that intuition, that strong intuition, you know, to be more discerning and more cautious of who we decide to collaborate with, instead of just sort of, you know, allowing ourselves to be inundated by, you know, all of the bullshit around us, right? So that is your reading for now until mid-September, Cancer. Again, I'm really sorry. I hope this is helpful, given that the eclipse is over. I had a lot of stuff going on and just poor planning, and then putting it off, and then being in my own Cancer moon self. The eclipse was really rough for me. I'm an Aquarius sun, so the eclipse was like, I felt like I had 500 pounds stacked on top of me for like a good 2 weeks, and it's beginning to lift a little bit, but still it was you know, not fun. Adding on having a moon in Cancer, which intensifies experiences a lot, which I'm sure a lot of you can understand. So if you want a personal reading, you can email me at tattoosandtarot@gmail.com. Or you can go to my website, which is tattoosandtarot.com, and go to the reading section, and we can schedule something. And I hope you all have a good month, and I will see you all in September. All right.